Chill here with Sirius Tallest Moon, and this is Venus Hour, Moon Day, which is Venus night. Venus, 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 and the Venus is in the 8th house in Virgo, squaring Uranus, ascendant with Pluto at 4 degrees Aquarius, midheaven 21 degrees Scorpio, and let's talk about not Ken from Barbie and Ken, although it may have been the inspiration. Ken Bank of America Ken BlackRock. The Ken who owns the Ken who owns Bank of America, who owns BlackRock. So does Ken own Larry Fink? Of course, the ascendant is with Pluto at degree 4 of foundations. Let's take a look at this chart. Ken Lewis. I don't have ascendant in midheaven. The moon is co-present with Ketu somewhere around the first to the second decan of Sagittarius. Moon Ketu in the decan of Sagittarius, that is accentuating all of those Jupiter quality of something way big, something that is of expansion nature. Now, what type of expansion? We look at Jupiter retrograde at 26 degrees Scorpio. Now, the question all of you may ask, Shirley, what makes him who he is? I don't know. There is Rahu. Now, Rahu is in an interesting place. Rahu, Uranus. Also, Donald Trump has Rahu and Uranus in Gemini. Pluto co-present with Saturn in Leo, which is, let's just say, the good news. One may grow to be a powerful, brilliant figure that has wealth of world resources, and in that case, economy, trading, power, or the world subjugated in debt. I don't know what is the debt of Munir Lewis, but I do not prescribe to either of you or your children to have the co-presence of Pluto and the Saturn. I have it in Scorpio. In the 9th house, indeed, let's just say the encyclopedists of this generation probably would probably record people like me who get into the taboo core concept of building foundations and so on. But I do not prescribe this to anyone alive, to be very honest. So definitely the placements of Rahu. Rahu is in the first term of the first decan of Gemini, and this gives us a placement that is, let's just say, this is the difference between my Rahu, which is in the second term, in the Jupiter term, and Ken Lewis. Why? Because for me, it's not enough to win. It's enough for me to enjoy the win and for the win to be the right thing. Jupiter is about enjoying, doing the right thing. Mercury is hopefully the ability or adaptability to get there. The first term is Mercury, Mercury, Mercury. What does it not concern itself with? What is right? Now, had my Rahu been just 3 degrees backwards, I could have been more like Ken Lewis. Okay? Just the power of understanding astrology and what does it tell about, let's say, people. By the way, I do have my Chiron in the first term of Gemini, meaning I've been wounded or hurt or not accepted or rejected by those who don't concern themselves with what is actually right. I don't know. But the Mercury itself is in the last decan of Aries, so I don't know who are those people in my life. It's the fourth house. Or alternatively, that the wound around the Alcyone related issues, which also played a part. Now, Rahu Uranus gives us a person that is growing into global trade structure. What, Musk? I don't remember. I think Uranus he has in Libra. Pluto, my descendant, but Rahu Mars in Aquarius, which definitely gives us a person who's interested in space, growing, global physical action or initiatives. And indeed, he's going to bank, he's going star 9 and star gazing. A lot more worldly, global, but Gemini gives us more of the global trade that can even be revolutionary. This Larry Fink, together with Trump, NATO, Israel, United States, is having a Uranus return. Not Larry Fink, Ken Lewis. Maybe also Larry Fink. I haven't looked at his chart in a while. Which tells me that this Uranus is going over his Rahu. And Uranus, I'm going to have my Uranus opposition around this time. It means that he's going to participate in the Civil War clock. I'm, for example, going to be one of the biggest abroad during a time of Civil War, but also could be a time of World War, which is unusual as per, I think it was Theoclides that talked about this. I have to only to praise Avi Segal, Professor Avi Segal, that wrote about the fact that people tend to idealize World War when they write in civil wars, and idealize civil wars or local conflicts when they write in world wars. We might be blessed with both of them at the same time. And this, so Ken Lewis is going to be, or is already having, right now Uranus is on his Rahu, which tells me that his life trajectory is completely revolutionized again. And I stopped my Yuli forecast, Yuli 2027 forecast, thinking about the globalism tendencies. By the way, I'm taking the bus as I'm speaking, and I kind of feel that this detail is relevant. And the bus is internal, it's within the city. So Uranus Rahu. Here is my astrologer tip for Ken Lewis. Do the first term of Gemini, set intention to do it like it was the second term. This is because we're going to have a polarity around the world, and everybody knows that the person that owns Bank of America, that owns BlackRock, that owns Larry Fink, that owns military intelligence, World Trade, World Economic Forum, is this Ken Lewis. Hey, it's visible. It's not like Mark Rich that was, secretly trading everything with everyone and then crooked, and then some people heard about him only years later. Passed away. But I think for this generation we could say what was making, Gemini has no filter. Donald Trump speech. And the guy crooked. and Barbie. But this is where's Mercury? Mercury Pisces. Mercury Pisces. This Pisces conglomerate is quite interesting, but my best tip for now for Ken Lewis is to do the first term of Gemini as though it was the second, to think Jupiter, but also because he has the power to do so. Pluto position, he's going to be having Pluto position 2027, 2028, 2029, and it's a Pluto 11 degree, so it's a Uranian degree of Pluto Leo. People want transparency, and like I said, I have an open pitch, which is take $1, give to the homeless, have them invest 50 cents, and then broadcast live what do these 50 cents do. But another line that shows the ethic of sourcing things from the mining of the minerals along the chain of production. If you can account for that level of transparency, you have the world. It's also financial education that is going to appease. It's a different type of thinking. And I think being aware that one has the power. One has the power now. A lot of people have the power and they're not. I saw it with my Pluto square. Just in my 40s. Entering my ingress in my 40s. Suddenly I had the power. In many things, and I was not aware. I was still in that. Wait a second, I'm the decent part in this. No, not with this person. Not with this person. No, but wait a second. You have the power of being an astrologer. And the Pluto opposition is another one of these phases where basically it's good to think back to the Pluto square. You would have Pluto square when Pluto conjoined my Saturn, which would have been probably when I was 2-3 years old, so 1986. 1986, even 1985-6. So think back to what happened then. Because the opposition is another chapter where there's an increased power. Now that the world is like, oh, the world is globalizing. Who owns the world? Ken Lewis. Now what would you do with that power? And if we think legacy, doing the first term of Gemini as though it was the second, Think about what if we didn't have to fight a civil war over abolition of slavery worldwide? What if somebody would just come with an initiative and say, oh, actually that's where the money is. Why we reduce inflammation? So it's a win-win-win-win-win. Is it easy to market to the people? No. They were sold on smugness. They were sold. Is it easier to market it to the people after the 30 million files of the Epstein? Absolutely. Now, this Uranus on Rahu is in the context of the Barbol basket, which is Jupiter crossing Saturn. And Jupiter is going to be a little bit squashed between the Saturn and Pluto, opposing Pluto. Jupiter Leo, I said, it gives always kind of a Me Too effect. Now think about honoring the feminine. He knows exactly what I'm talking about at every single level. Just think about adapting the world economy to that. This man will die with a legacy that stands for 12 centuries. Why? Because Sedna Rahu. Sedna is co-present with Rahu. Now he would probably have to unthink, unlearn, unbecome many things, but is scheduled to. Uranus Rahu, Pluto towards the Pluto opposition, Jupiter going over Saturn. What's the limit to expansion? Any limited or rigid thinking regarding what the meter-related issues. In the Regulian, at the time where the Regulian is afraid of what? Of the Templars. What is Saturn? The order. Sol in Aries, Sun exalted in Aries, Neptune Libra, Chiron Scorpio, Jupiter Scorpio, last decan of Scorpio. Jupiter is now, Jupiter Procyon was trining Ken Lewis, Jupiter. Let's talk about this Pisces conglomerate. So we have Venus in the middle decan of Pisces, where the values are of spirit and matter, but not in a Taurian way. Austin Kopek describes this, I think, as a man that is upside down. What is grounded, his grounding is in the spirit, in the ether. And he is breaking from the ether. With Venus in this decan, he has the capacity to bring from the ether. And the need to see both form and essence, or form and ether. It can also be, a little bit of toxic standards for beauty. It can manifest in that way, but it can also manifest as belief, value, the inner and the outer coming from the ether, incarnated into everything that is doing. There is a great capacity to have values that are also in the etheric. Jupiter, last decan of Scorpio, the regeneration, the courage to delve into the depth of the deep, but also it's more of a Jupiterian area of Scorpio. Is being able to have a vision of what needs to be transmuted so that we can expand in Gemini. Think about, Christianity was bringing a lot of the teachings of Mary Magdalene no longer being portrayed as a whore or a repentant whore, right before what? the expeditions. It's kind of like, hey, renditing Christianity before they spread it out to the world in a time where they have the stranglehold of Islam. Mercury Pisces, Mars 20, Mars last degrees of Pisces. Mars is in the degree of of Pisces where the water breaks, the head of the baby appears. It's basically thinking about our point of origin, our conception, not as the conception moment, but as the birthing moment. Orgasmic birthing supportive world. Particularly with that Jupiter Scorpio, what is everybody worried about? The child trade, the organ trade. I know because a broadcast from Israel. Israel has Pluto in the 5th house. Everybody will be talking about the Yemen of children, the misplaced children, the IVF fetus that have 7 fetus. Oh yeah, there were 2, 3, and the one frozen, but there was 7 others. And then unregistered births and so on. That thing is going to be in 20 years of exposure. Now, if you prepare yourself for transparency, think about the fact that the Jews released a lot of videos that explain the fact that they were doing the basically the money laundering, which is the charging the debt. Debt is a fictional entity array. But it's not the issue. Why did they do that? Because they weren't allowed on any of the business sectors. They were marginalized in every community. So what did they have to do? Protection. Okay, but everybody knows protection. It's a form of crime. It's inventing debt and then charging for invented debt. But basically, they had to trade everything with everyone. And they're being open about how the Jews come to be at that position. Okay, so they're doing a lot of shadow work at this time where the world is not so fond of the rich folks or the people that benefit off of financial crisis. But we also have to ask, why is it these people? And the answer of the Jews is, well, they were marginalized from every sector, so they had to do basically crime. And then they were marginalized by the regimes that led them to do this crime. And I said 2, 3 years before, I said, well, everybody's talking about the Jews, but the Christians couldn't do, and the Muslims couldn't do what? Debt. They couldn't do usury, so they allocated it to the Jews that originally also couldn't do usury, but they had to rendit some things. Now, of course, there's a story of Jesus that he turned the basically the business of the Jews over, so you cannot charge for religion. Such stories were also with the Protestants towards the Catholics, where they were charging for prayers. And then, of course, there's Prophet Amos that already touches the human trafficking within the Jewish society, leading to exile. So I'm not alone in my arguments. So now, this point of I have an ascendant around there. So this point is a lot about people with placements there, orgasmic birthing. Let's say having a Saturn around this area could mean that there was a limit to that point of the water breaks, the head of the baby appears. And how could that have affected the worldview of the person? Let's say the person had to convert, or the family had to convert, or there was any Saturn Pisces or Saturn Jupiter, it can be a limit around what religion, or Jupiter Saturn. Or restriction that is posed because of religion. I was born with such a combination, and years after my Saturn maturation am I learning only what did that mean, because I'm very secular. So Mercury Pisces, what I love about Mercury Pisces, by the way, doing astrology and
is a very fascinating type of vocation, or um, even as a podcast, or even, let's just say, because it's interesting, then there are a lot of attunements, there are a lot of sun and half channelings, a lot of things. And I have to admit, my experience with charts that have Mercury Pisces, these people they can tell you a joke in a dream, they can deliver a message in a dream, and sometimes it's an even easier form of communication. Eh, that they have the ability, the cunning ability to portray something nonverbal through a dream, to perceive the facets of reality that are abstract. They can also see, when we talk about economy, they can also see the mysterious patterns that people might not pay attention to. I dare say that Mercury Pisces people could be perceived as inconsistent when, depending on their Mars, or if they have, let's say, fixed sign placements, they might not at all be so. Or they might be very consistent and congruent with a certain thing, while the world could perceive them as very adaptive or very malleable or very changing, because that centeredness is coming from that Zen place of Pisces when they see the constant within the storm. Yes, the kind of Mercury that could sail the North Sea. And essentially, what about the Mars? I don't know. Like, I have um, encountered various Pisces Mars in my life, all very profound. I think nearly all of them had to do with some sort of action and communication as experience, sometimes to my detriment. um, Very compatible for initiations, but also very susceptible to the harm of initiations. Mars, Jupiter, trine give us a person who is able to dream big and dream with action. Venus, Pluto in conjunct is interesting. There's a certain volatility to the values of the person. For example, the economy could have been quite volatile. And this could be an example of a person that can deal with the energy, or particularly in the second part of life, deal with the energy of, I won't even say market volatility, because something way deeper. It's values volatility, beliefs volatility, power and conglomerate volatility, policies about debt volatility. Okay, remember that the teeth of the children rot because the parents ate unripe fruit. Let the teeth of the children no longer rot because two different debt-related, moral-related, spiritual-related. Jeremiah from Babel. And I saw it with Pluto coming to Aquarius. I am not a black woman. Not second coming of Christ. Abolish the Inquisition, then we'll speak. And now, talked about the case of Haymanut Kassau in that context. Lilith Capricorn. Wait with that Uranus sextile Sun, Uranus sextile Aries Sun, Eureka's ability to adapt, ability to start something and edit it and adapt, and even in an unusual way. Now, such people, very Iranian people, I have Uranus in the 10th house, so I can relate from a different point of view. But very Iranian people, with time, they learn to live within their silly walks. By the way, Uranus Jupiter can actually be a silly walk. I'm a study case. Now, Sun in a cardinal sign, or the Aries sign, the head of the project, the cornerstone sign, sets the cornerstone. Uranus suddenly edits, suddenly changes, but in a way that works well with the cornerstone. That this is a man that can be both adaptable, a maverick, and congruent in a way that surprises even himself. Um, Uranus square Mercury. Here we have a nature of communication and trade that is in tension. Wait a second. In tension with that um, sudden, unpredictable. For example, Uranus is revolutionizing something, and then Mercury comes and communicates something that is interfering with the chaotic current of the flow of Uranus. Um, Lilith Capricorn, Saturn ruled Lilith, Saturn co-present with Pluto, Saturn in Leo. This is a person that is very well acquainted with the importance of aligning oneself with the, for example, this could be one of the people to whom women may be owing their right to vote. Okay, I remind you that the certain countries only gave women the right to vote in the 70s. Why? Because this man knows that for him to climb up the ladder means honoring Isis and Osiris. In other terms, Lilith, the woman that would not be subjugated, women having their own bank account and work and being their own person in the workforce, or reading for tax benefits written separately, basically mean also women being in debt. This is in cahoots with John D. Rockefeller's perception that gave the right to vote to women, and Ken Lewis would be acutely aware that honoring Lilith was his way to climb up the ladder. Now, here is the thing for Pluto Leo, the woman that would not be subjugated in the Gilded Age was the courtesan that was a courtesan because she didn't want to marry. And by the way, one of the ways to get women out of the freedom of courtesanship was to offer them the same freedom in marriage. And then with the bisextile, collaborate with the religious, okay? And then marriage or a particular arrangement to do with eroticism became something that is not taboo under marital. And this is a lot of shadow work that women has to do, because they wanted their partner to be monogamous. Even for in terms of status, they didn't want their partner sleeping around. Now, instead of tackling the eroticism, actually going to the places that would shift society from the core, they would either try to learn from the courtesan which would harm their relationships from the core of the core of the core, because there's no such thing as a courtesan. There's a raped infant. A lot of women gonna be mad at me, I know, particularly because for them it's like, oh, it's feminism, and it's this, it's that. For a man, it's a life or death issue. Sometimes, particularly higher up the ladder, it's the question of will he be able to be easily extorted, because there's always going to be a third party between him and the so-called courtesan. Which, now, that's how we get, for example, political assassination. Okay, so the person is supposed to be the assassin and a politician are both harmed and mind hacked to bring into synchronicity with them so that the shooting can happen. More things that I can say. Oh. Can. Okay, everything's fine. No, somebody's running out of the building while I'm talking about political assassination. It was kind of scary. Yes. So that is what I have to say about this chart. Again, coming into the Pluto opposition with the Uranus return, Uranus Rahu that's with Jupiter in a double sextile that the world has not known. I'll be looking to see what this man will do with his energy. Now, here's the other tip that I have to give. If in the Gilded Age, they're going to say, Shirley, who's not born in the Gilded Age, come on, folks. The same concept of courtesanship as women liberation existed also in the feminist revolution. It was trafficking, but so were marriage. Arranged marriage is a form of trafficking. Said the astrologer that doesn't do arranged marriage. Now, do the Medicis want to vouch for me? And now, Sanhedrin. Why am I getting Sanhedrin being relevant somehow? Is the Mishnah, the name Memonot. Memon, I think everybody knows. Okay, Hebrew, Judaic, which is a big point in Israel right now, in the Mishnah and the Talmud. Maimonides that wrote a lot of the introduction. Who can be a judge? Ooh la la. Who can be a judge? How do we investigate the people? And how do we decide on the verdict per which offense? Talking about judges and police forces. Small Sanhedrin in the cities. And they dealt also with executions, incest, and cheating, which is called ni'uf. I think it's called adultery. Adultery. There is no such thing as the latter. If we understand that, why am I saying that? A lot of people are like, oh, but the person is cheating, they will betray them. An infant was raped. Okay? Sexuality that is not rape cannot have what is important is for the person to be open, for it's important for the person to not lie about it, for the person to address this before they expose a person to, let's say, STDs or something. And believe me, I have a stellium in Scorpio. This war, and this is another tip for Ken Lewis, this war is about willingly consensual sex, also on the medical level. Okay, sex is not willingly consensual, even if it was by people pleasing. Causes from various forms of inflammation, from candida to yeast to cancer to neurodegenerative diseases. Again, I didn't say rape. I didn't say rape even. Religions that are not going to adapt either are going to perish or are going to oscillate in a way where humanity is going to see, or significant. Either we're going to be like the Mayans and the Aztecs that has been a nice cooking book. Well, okay, pick a recipe for the cooking book that. And this can start a world war. um, Now, why is this issue about adultery important? Because adultery is trafficking, and the way, let's say, to take down the testimonies over, let's say, incest, was to call it adultery. Dead camps, dead camps. That's the kind of stuff that brings dead camps. Okay, whenever something is around beta per se, it is so. My grandfather's family in almost its entirety was lost. Um, and this is a man who would know what I'm talking about. He knows that I speak the truth. Oh. 1947, he would have been born right after Pluto Uranus. So he was born within the upcoming or the aftermath of the bisextile that we would have around the creation of NATO, the creation of Israel, the creation of the Mossad, IDF, CIA, I think as well. Epstein, das ist. And Chiron opposition. Chiron in Scorpio, Chiron is going to oppose Chiron from Taurus. Now you're going to say, Shirley, what, only the elite gets a free reading? I could give you a free reading, but here's the thing. Take very good look at my readings before you even think to request. Yes, I didn't study only from the North American astrologers, but also from the Slavic ones. And the juxtaposition with the Mercury Aries uh, by a person who grew up in a country that was Israeli and has Rahu in the no filter Gemini. it, yeah. um, and of course has been through the horrid stuff that could make a person feel powerless enough to speak, like thinking that the words don't have as much power and so on. And oh my god. Like I said, don't oppress people. They, 2030, we're gonna have Rahu Ketu return, Rahu Ketu reversal for this chart. These two significant placements in Leo. Again, one of the biggest tips that I can give is that we've switched from the courtesan being the liberated woman to the requirement to have withdrawn consent, willing consent at every single encounter, which in and of itself negates the transactional aspect of sexual relations and emotional relations. Just begin to envision what does it do to the intelligence, to the economy, to diplomacy, to and people are going to require for that in time of war. Security Council 1325. Is going to have a Saturn return or a telic of Saturn return around 2030 with Saturn and Mars and Lilith conjunction in the last decan of Taurus with Saturn and Mars ruling over Neptune and Pluto and Aries. And Aries. It's bigger than an outer planet crossing Beta per se. It's just indirect. So at first I didn't notice that, and because it was like, we had Uranus around Beta per se, but like, no, that's Pluto and Neptune around Beta per se by the merit of the rulers. That is a very big conglomerate where if people don't honor willing and withdrawn consent in every spirit and matter level, in praxis, because it's Taurus, it's the Tachlis sign, we might go extinct. Um, Now just think what it's like for a person who very quite literally owns the world to adapt to something that could create a 12 millennial legacy or something that is completely antithetical. Now here's the drama. Uranus Rahu has a fated trajectory. The Jupiter bisextile opposing Pluto with Uranus and Neptune is unprecedented in our times. Neither is, as well as the co-presence and steel orb conjunction with Sedna. And the fact that Saturn and Pluto are in the fixed axis, but Uranus and Rahu are in the mutable axis, Jupiter in the fixed axis, makes that Pisces mutability a little bit fixed, a little bit crisisy. Sun in cardinal Aries, brave sun, exalted sun, ruling over something that is very rigid, that is very telic, which is Pluto, Saturn in Leo. Um, and Lilith in a cardinal sign, starting something, starting foundations of something that could stand the time of even austerity, because Saturn Pluto co-presence can denote at a certain type of austerity. Or what are the values that stand the test of time even within austerity? People are going to require for everything that I said about withdrawn consent and so on within austerity. Trust me, I have Pluto Saturn co-presence in Scorpio. Um, Now with the Aries cohabitants and the Aries semi-sextiling already beta per se, it's not just going to be for the marginalized, but for the conglomerate of marginalized. So the marginalized people within austerity, within war, to have all of their rights all the way to embodied tantric willing consent withdrawn consent. It also means that there cannot be soul contracts that violate that. Okay? Now you're gonna tell them, but surely this is utopia. The people thought that women having the right to vote and their own separate bank account prior to the Second World War and First World War is a weird utopia, la la land, and how will women even? Mark my words, we will not get to 2300 without ensuring that within the timelines of AI. How? I don't know how. It's not a couple of A-bombs anymore. And let me tell you something. Albert Einstein talks about sticks and stones. There aren't gonna be any. Not even in bunkers. Um, the fact that he was born in Mississippi is fascinating. Anybody? Mississippi, goddamn. Um, mm, 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 mm. A little bit of Wikipedia. Ken Lewis. That's the person. Former CEO and president and chairman of Bank of America, currently the second largest bank in the United States and 12th largest by total assets. What is he doing now in the world? While CEO of Bank of America, Lewis was noted for purchasing the failing companies Countrywide Financial and Merrill Lynch, resulting in large losses for the bank and necessitating financial assistance from the federal government. September 30, 2009, Bank of America confirmed that Lewis would be retiring by the end of the year. He was replaced in the end. Okay, what is he doing right now?
Other roles: member of the Financial Service Roundtable, Financial Service Forum, Federal Advisory Committee, chairman of United Way and Central Carolinas, INC, member of committee to encourage corporate philanthropy, director of the Home Ownership Education and Counseling Institute, vice chairman of corporate fund board, the John F. Kennedy Center for Performing Arts, and past chairman of National Urban League. Moved to Heidelberg from Mississippi. His father was in the army. Legacy. Now, of course, people will talk about the losses after the 2008. And by the way, people talk about the losses. This is basically a legend when it comes to the people that benefit of big financial crises. It's basically a wealth transition. Named in several lawsuits since his retirement from Bank of America for defrauding investors and the government when buying Merrill Lynch. Banned for 3 years from serving as a public company official in order to pay $10 million for failing to disclose Merrill Lynch losses of $9 billion to investors prior to the takeover. Warren Buffett is among the few public voices to offer a positive perspective of Lewis' legacy. Buffett regards Lewis as having played a crucial but unintended role in limiting the severity of the Great Recession, referring to him as the ironic hero of the 2008 economic meltdown. The acquisition prevented Merrill Lynch's imminent collapse, which would have greatly exacerbated the 2008 financial crisis. Now, this is I don't have the capacity to challenge this argument. It looks like a very good argument, at least on its formality. And this is also a point to think about. The people that limit the extent of a disaster don't always get the accolades for that. If you think Lehman Brothers was bad, imagine Lehman compounded by Merrill Lynch, Buffett commented. Well, it looks agreeable. It looks like a good argument. I don't have the capacity to challenge that financially, so I cannot form an opinion. I don't have the knowledge regarding that particular topic. So this is the man that people will remember as behind the 2008 crisis. Again, 2008, if we look at it astrologically, Pluto was ingressing to Capricorn. We were expecting to have a big upheaval on a Saturn related, on an at least 28-year cycle level. And any person that would have been in a big, significant position, for example, Stanley Fischer in Israel, was predicting, warning people that they should not get a mortgage on the basis of the lower subprime. That except for people like me that anyway were not having the capital to buy a house, probably at that time I did not also have the first payment or the down payment. But and then I knew my boss at Nest Technologies that had to go back to living with the parents at with a husband, dogs, and family didn't. It still affected me significantly. The crisis still affected me significantly. But this is how something as simple as
the people behind the decision to lower the subprime communicating their decision effectively, not getting through to, let's say with the power of the media,